And we are just in our office and we thought we'd jump on and have a bit of a chat today because there's some super exciting things in the works for hospitality employers. I did a little post, I've done a couple of posts on it, but I wanted to explain it a bit more because it can get quite complex, this area. And what we want to talk about is financial incentives today. So we're talking financial incentives for employers, and I mean, from our perspective, obviously we're talking about hospitality employers. So there's a lot of really cool support out there for employers to encourage them and support them taking on training for their staff. So I wanted to talk about, and I guess give you a rundown of all the different types of incentives that might be available for you and your business. And there's quite a few here. And because now's a really good time to talk about it because there is a couple of new ones that have just come into effect as of the 1st of July. So can you talk us through the new ones that have come into effect from the 1st of July? Okay. Is there one? There's one or two?
There's a range of initiatives that have been put out through the federal government that in relation to apprenticeships and traineeships predominantly, and they are... and all this information, while we're privy to it, it needs to be confirmed by your apprenticeship network service provider. And they're the people that come to the workplace and they organise the contracts that surround apprentices and trainees. I think that, we're moving into the first part of a financial year. We've just got rid of June. We're in the middle of winter, but I think it's a really good time to look at the options, particularly for apprentices and trainees. I think that the initiatives that are being that are available at the moment, I think that there's probably, there hasn't been a better time really to consider those as options. That is a trainee or an apprentice. This is for full-time and for part-time employees, keeping in mind.
Yeah.
And there's also, I see that the AHA have been doing some work in relation to, giving consideration to moving perhaps some of your casual employees into a part-time situation, and thereby they can undertake a traineeship where you get the financial incentives that are applied to that space, but you also get the accredited training that's provided by the state. So there's two areas that people should look at or consider here. That is the federal government look after the financial incentives, and the state government look after the training that's attached to those accredited training programs. And the best of my knowledge in relation to the opportunities, there's some really good wage subsidies that are available for apprentice cooks in regional Victoria. It's seen as a skill shortage area, and there's up to 75% of the first year of wages, 50% of the second year, and there's 25% of the wages component in the third year of the apprenticeship program. And that's together with the financial incentives that are applied to that apprenticeship as well. That is, there's $4,000 as just a general incentive there for employers.
So if we talk about let's go back then to the first one you were talking about. So this is called the Adult Apprentice Wage Subsidy, okay? Yes. And this is a program that has been launched or relaunched by Michaelia Cash. They did trial it at the start of the year, and it pertains to employers in regional areas of apprentices in skill shortage areas. So for hospitality employers, this means commercial cookery. And like Chris said, where you're looking at 75% of first year wages, 50% of second year, and 25% of third year, which is huge. And most employers or most people, that adds up, it equates to about $37,000.
It is a really, really attractive option for consideration. I think that it's probably a bit of a no-brainer at this point. If you're able to get onto that, I know that there's limited spaces available in this area because there's a number of apprenticeships that occupy that space. So apprenticeship in cookery is just one of them.
This is Australia-wide,
and this is Australia-wide
across every industry area. So we're looking at I think there's around 290 allocated to Victoria, and you can imagine that's across every industry area. So if you're looking to take advantage of that, in January, it got released on January 1st, and people were coming in over the holidays to do those sign-ups, the apprenticeship centres, and they were all gone within 2 days. So this has been re-released as of July 1st, which is really exciting. There's some more support there, but these are sure to go very quickly.
Absolutely. I think that, and that's just one of the options that are available. And we talk about mature age apprentices, and I know that there's been changes to the award also that in respect to wages that apply to people once they reach 21. And I think that that's one of the reasons that there's been the from the department to look at sort of giving a bit of a cushion there for employers, and so there's an additional $4,000 as an financial incentive for employers. So that's a total of $8,000, and my understanding is also there's $1,000 as a regional loading. So where someone's putting on an apprentice that's over 21 or over, there's up to $9,000 just the way it is, without the wage subsidies. And if you're lucky enough to be able to access those wage subsidies, well, I think, as I said, jump on board. Hi, Jazz.
I can see people jumping onto our live stream. Thanks for joining us. So if I just can go back and I guess clarify what those different ones are for you, you're looking at, there's up to $4,000 per eligible apprentice or trainee available in standard incentives, and that's for any employer in any industry employing an eligible trainee or an apprentice. The Commonwealth Government gives you up to $4,000 in incentives for that. As of July 1st, there has always been that extra support to take on a mature age apprentice.
That's right.
And traditionally that was from the ages of 25, and they have recently reduced that down to 21 to be in line with these changes to the award.
That's right, yes.
So
and I think they're really good initiatives. These are really things that are certainly worthy of consideration. It's a really good way of just a bit of a cushion for the wages or the outgoings that surround taking on an apprentice or a trainee.
Yeah. And that, the productivity and the skill development does take, a bit of time.
Absolutely. But I think that, look, apprentices, given that they're, at 21 years old, people are more mature and they're more able to take on responsibilities and often become very, very valuable members of staff. I think that while we've got apprentices that are able to gain access to the incentive, I think there's also everybody should be looking at the front of house options also. I mean, you can't if you have good front of house staff, it means the difference between return business and perhaps not so.
Yeah. So, on recapping on, there's the $4,000 for apprentices 21 or over.
Yes.
There's $1,000 in addition for apprentices in rural or regional areas.
Yes.
There are also additional incentives for 45 years or older, so senior, I guess, apprentices and school-based apprentices. And then for front of house trainees, any trainee or apprentice is eligible for those standard incentives, and so that's up to $4,000.
That's right. There's $1,500 there for the part-time trainee, and $4,000 for a full-time trainee. And often the difference between an apprentice and a trainee is clearly an apprentice is typically a 3-year duration, whereas a trainee is often completed within a 12-month time frame.
Yeah.
There is also a front of house apprenticeship that's available as well for consideration, but there's a $4,000 for full time, $1,500 for part time. The other thing to be considered too is the fact that where employees meet the criteria to become an eligible apprentice or trainee, there is a work cover exemption also.